In 9 months, at least 8 scientists, engineers, and military officials connected to the most classified corners of American defense and aerospace have vanished, been murdered, or died under circumstances that defy explanation. They held patents inside America's rocket engines. They commanded billion-dollar black budget programs. They directed MIT's most powerful energy lab. They tracked objects in deep space for the Pentagon. They worked inside Los Alamos, the birthplace of the atomic bomb. One by one, they are gone. Today, Rogue Discourse is going to discuss what this all means, how we got here, and why it's important.
No official body has connected these cases. One sitting congressman went on record and said something dark is going on, then added, unprompted, "I'm not suicidal." This story is what they knew, what they were building, and why someone may have needed them gone before the most consequential disclosure in American history could unfold.
Okay, we've got a lot to cover today. I feel like we've got a big show, and we've also got a PowerPoint. So
those of you who aren't aware, this whole thing kind of spawned off of the recently missing General Neil McCasland, and that's where we've kind of rabbit holed into the rest of this. So if you've seen any of the information going around about him, this is where we got to after looking into that further. So
yeah, as we've been slowly uncovering, this case keeps growing because people keep going missing or dying, or it's been disclosed that they are. So we talked about some of these people already, but they're all going to be packaged up from what we know into this one. So what we have here on the screen, I just want to show, is every name on this list connects to one institution. So think about this in the back of your head while we're going through all these people. They're all connected to the Air Force Research Lab. So we've got a common thread here. And we're going to show you guys how they all connect. So we're going to get into it. So first person is Monica Reza. I may be saying her name wrong. So she was an aerospace engineer, a technical fellow at Aerojet Rocketdyne, and she was a director of materials processing at NASA. So lots of big keywords there, I feel like, off the bat. What do you think, Rogue? Sounds important.
Yeah, for sure. Sounds much more important than anything I do.
Yeah, she's big brain. So she vanished while she was hiking with no trace, no sound, no body, and zero forensic evidence. I feel like that's a theme we are going to see.
I agree.
she's left us in Upper West Ridge Trail in the National Forest of the Angeles National Forest. Why do I feel like it should be Los Angeles National Forest? Like, that
I know,
sounds
it's weird. I hesitated the first time I read about this too. I think I was during a live stream or something, and I had hesitated because it feels weird to say it without the loss. Yeah,
we're missing Loss. She's not in the building with us. So this was in June of last year, which I didn't like. I know we've covered a couple times now in some of our lives, but this hasn't been big headline press.
I do find it interesting. I've also already stated that I think it's interesting that we haven't had a lot of people really diving into Neil McCasland's situation, that there were so many more people talking about, Nancy Guthrie and that whole thing. But for this very important individual, we weren't hearing a lot. And it just goes to show how much we were not hearing, given how many other people we're going to cover here. Also, just I've never heard of. And we're talking about people like you and I who do tend to pay attention to, I guess, like obscure news more than other people. So I find it really intriguing that we hadn't heard of it, honestly.
Right. Yes. And we're going to talk about 6 of these people. I think there's even more missing now since I've made it. Yeah. So that's why I wanted to kind of make that. Yeah. I think when I was starting this, I had 6 people lined up, and then it came out that there's now 8. So just keep that in mind as we're going through. We'll probably have a part 2 on this. So she was apparently found, she was 30 feet behind her hiking partner, waved, then she was gone, which is crazy. It's 30 feet really that far? How does that even happen?
It's not that far. It's really not that far.
That's not. Feet. And apparently there was helicopters, thermal drones, cadaver dogs, hundreds of volunteers, never found. And the search ended after 8 days. So That's
this. Every time I hear these too, where they're in like a national forest, I think of like the missing 411 cases that are always just super crazy. I'm like, watch, they're all like, some sort of conspiracy.
yeah.
They're all connected to the same like overlords or something. I don't know.
Yeah, what, like, how would well, and like there's like so many things where people talk about how people just randomly go missing in national forests, like just totally out
Yes,
of the blue.
a lot.
So
There's a lot of stories about national forests for sure.
sorry, one second. So what I find weird is like NASA issued no statement, JPL issued no statement, and the Aerojet Rocketdyne issued no statement. So I feel like that kind of gives cover-up vibes. What do you think?
Well, that's how, I feel the same way about the McCasland case, because we've heard a few people say little things here and there that are very vague. But prior to that, like, you would think if this is someone who has national security information, secret information, weapons information, that it would be something they would be talking about or trying to make a statement to get all hands on deck sort of a thing. And I just feel like we've heard nothing, which to me screams a lot more that they don't want us to know for some reason. And I don't know why that would be, but
Like that is
the same way here.
Yeah, that's so weird. I guess there was I'm reading something and it says she appeared on Find a Grave 4 days into the search while helicopters were still airborne. Green burial requires a physical body.
That?
I think it's like a website.
Like to get like a plot or something, I assume?
Yes.
Like Find a Grave, like I need a burial plot?
It's weird. Millions of cemetery records. So she was not pronounced dead at this point. And yet she shows up in a database to find a grave.
That's weird.
That's very weird. Weird for sure. And it requires a physical body. But there's been no obituary, no death certificate. This is just gives so weird. And then apparently the search duration was also a red flag because the standard minimum for missing people is 14 days. And there was only 8 days worth of search.
That's a pretty short period of time. Yeah.
Right. So obviously she's missing, but somehow appeared in Find a Grave. So I don't think people are actually calling her missing. Just something to think about. Okay. So let's move on to McCasland.
Also was in the Command Air Force Research Laboratory. He oversaw a $4.4 billion portfolio of classified R&D, directed space vehicle, directorate, and Phillips research site at Kirkland Air Force Base. He ran the laboratory at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, alleged site of the Roswell crash materials. So that was been a big thing that they've been talking about. A lot of people have been talking about this case because, again, some people are, but not nearly as many as you would think. A lot of them have this theory that his disappearance is connected to the information that he had access to while, being in his position at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in regards to the Roswell stuff. And the fact that he went missing very, very shortly after they had made the announcement that they were going to be releasing the UFO UAP files through the government. He also personally funded Monica Reza's Mandaloy research. Put that alloy inside U.S. rockets. And this was kind of where I was more so geared to think there was suspicion around his knowledge of weapons and whatnot, especially given the current status of the world at this current moment in time. So I thought, oh boy, was he, did something happen to him because of the knowledge he had around weapons and whatnot. Named in 2016 WikiLeaks Podesta emails as a secret UAP disclosure advisor to Tom DeLonge. He was someone who wanted to disclose the information, and he had been outspoken about this around the time of like the Clinton-Trump election cycle. So he had been a while back, and he was there. He was stationed in this position, I think it was from 2011 to 2013. And so I was questioning as well, I guess the the one thing that I think could potentially push you towards the idea that the UAP disclosure type stuff was the cause of potentially his disappearance was just that fact to me, was that he was specifically outspoken about the disclosure, while there have been plenty of other people post him that have worked in the same position with the same weapons type access. So why was he specifically potentially, a target if that is the case? And that would be the one kind of outlier, I suppose, would be that he was particularly, outspoken about the UAP stuff. He disappeared again 6 days after Trump announced the release of all of the UFO files, which have not been released yet. He left home with only his .38 caliber revolver, no phone, no wallet, no glasses. He had prescription glasses, and no phone is wild to me. No tracking device. And I don't know about, I know we've talked about, I'm pretty freaking blind. I mean, if I don't have my glasses and I'm going into the woods, forget about it, dude. There's no way I'm coming out.
No.
His anonymous X account went silent at exact minute his wife reported him missing, which is very suspicious. The account had posted daily for 4 years. Advanced propulsion science, spacecraft schematics. Also, his wife, in regards to his wife's statements about him being missing, they had come out kind of pushing this narrative that he had. They initially pushed it by calling it a silver alert, right? So, like, when we think of a silver alert in regards to like the national alert system and whatnot, silver alerts are for older individuals who probably have some kind of diminished mental capacity. So think about someone who maybe went missing and they have dementia or Alzheimer's, something like that. So the concern is that they're lost or confused. And so they had put this out as a silver alert in the beginning. And his wife came out and specifically posted that she wanted to clarify he did not have any diminished mental capacity, that he was completely fine, that his physical abilities were great as well. The week prior, he had done a 60-mile bike ride. He was physically fit. However, they then also kind of doubled down after the fact when they made another announcement post her post saying he was fine mentally, stating he had been complaining of mental fog just prior to his disappearance, which I find interesting. And I've said before, I find it interesting given the fact that what is mental fog? I mean, it's not like we're talking about a scientific term that is diagnosable. You can use it willy-nilly and people will have a hard time arguing it because it's not going to be in his medical records really in any capacity. Right. And they can say it, which then causes you to have your assumptions about why he went missing. What I found particularly interesting was his wife made a comment in addition to that about how she didn't think it had anything to do with like the information he had or the UAP type connection. And she said, but she kind of made a joke. Mind you, we're talking days after his disappearance. And she had also stated it would have been more likely, and maybe we can just assume that he was zapped up by a UAP. And that's why he disappeared. And that to me was very bizarre, a very weird
like
statement.
She's telling you what happened to him.
Like, but as if she's making a joke, a lighthearted joke about her husband who's still missing and may not be dead and nobody knows where he is. And you're like, maybe he was just zapped up by a UFO. I don't know about you, but that shit's wild to say. Like, I feel like that's a crazy statement when you're active. Like, think about the stress and anxiety you would have if one of your immediate family members is missing. I can't fathom cracking a weird joke like that. Just weird to me. Like when I heard that, I went, this is bizarre, man. The whole thing is bizarre.
Well, it is weird. I will say though, to do that thing that I do sometimes, she has a PhD in astrophysics. She's like a NASA astronaut semifinalist. Those people are a little weird. Like, we're not talking about you and me. We're talking about someone who... I just
think when you're in that, like, dark hole of, like, I just want to find my spouse or, like, my kid or whatever, to even have the, like, thought of something even along those lines, to me, feels like... And I've not been in the position. I've not had my husband go missing or my kids get kidnapped or anything like that.
Right.
Thank God. But I just can't imagine anything. I'd be so one-track mind that I feel like it's a little weird, you know?
It's definitely weird, but she probably is weird. Like, she's weird, but she's probably weird. Those people are not like they're not at my level of intellect.
And then you also question too, if you're the spouse of someone who has worked in a prestigious position like that, I imagine that there is some sort of also like a almost like a repetitively kind of conditioning that probably happens, given like most people in those positions probably have to like leave without notice, kind of like head out for whatever job came up like last minute, and they may not be able to provide a lot of information. So it makes me almost wonder if part of her thinks that maybe he's doing something and they're just looking for him out of precaution, but that he's actually been on a mission of some sort that he couldn't talk about, so he just didn't. But obviously we don't know that.
So there's also a report from the journalist Ross Coulthart, and he raised concerns. Coulthart. I don't know how to say that word.
Love him. He's great.
His access to particle beam weapons technology, which is, I think, the bigger theme here, is a lot of these people are actually connected to weapons tech, which is a big deal.
That's what I thought initially too.
Yeah. And so I guess they're at the intersection of directed energy weapons and advanced propulsion. So a lot of this has to do with propulsion technology, which is, I've even seen that on my X feed recently, where they're talking about this kind of tech, and a lot of these people that are missing had a lot to do with that. So I don't know. I think that's pretty interesting. And we know a lot of things get shady around weapons tech, in my opinion.
And I mean, don't get me wrong. I've had someone else give me an alternative thought as well in regards to like what may have happened. And essentially they had said, when you're talking about someone who, and maybe we don't know, maybe something was coming up that could have put him in a position of possible danger, whether it was something in regards to weapons or in regards to UAP. And he knew that once something takes place, his family could be in jeopardy or anything. And that, some of these people in these high level positions who then are put into positions of possible danger like this may just choose to take the, I guess you could call it like the selfless way out and like, unalive themselves so their family and everyone else stays safe. I suppose I could see that, but that still doesn't answer why. That would still indicate that there was someone trying to do something because of something he knew. And that's the concern here. Not just that he went missing in the woods, but what's happening behind. Because if that is the case, that still indicates that something is going on that's shady.
Yeah, I agree. It would also tell me that he was warned by somebody. And no one's came out that we know that's warned us of anything.
Whether directly or indirectly or whatever, but he knew based on either past things he's known about, maybe other people like the ones we're discussing here or whatever, and ultimately made that decision. And I don't think at this point, I don't know about you, but I don't think I've heard specifically anything new in regards to him being found. So at this point, I don't believe he has been. I think we would have heard that by now.
Yeah, I think so too. Grillmair words. He was a Caltech astrophysicist, 40 years at IPAC, PI on Hubble and Spitzer telescopes. So what happened to this guy? Well, he was homicided. He was taken out on his front porch at 6:10 a.m. by a man previously arrested on his property with a loaded rifle, whose charges were mysteriously dropped.
Of course they were.
Yes. And so apparently he had a remote property in California, and this happened only in February. This was not long ago, in 2026.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I saw the date because I haven't heard of this one.
So I guess on December of 2025, the man who ended up killing him, Freddie, was found on the property with an unregistered rifle. He was arrested on felony charges, and the Newsom-appointed judge dropped all charges in the interest of justice. Snyder was released back, and he failed to appear at his February 5th hearing. Charges were dismissed anyway. 11 days later, he returned and killed Grillmair. So that to me sounds like a setup if I had ever heard one. I do know judges lately have been obviously letting murderers go, so we know they've been letting murderers go, not even attempted ones. So we know the court system is corrupt, but this should not have happened. He should have been behind bars.
And we're only talking 11 days before McCasland went missing. I'm pretty sure that was the 27th, right? So that's wild in and of itself. Like these two people who've worked in the same field, who had access to the same information. This
Both
is
in
one of those moments
California.
where I would want to ask like Chat GPT or someone the likelihood of that, because I get that people, stuff happens to people every day. But once you start making those connections of, these people both worked within the same field, both had access to the same information, both knew the same groups of people, and were whatever, something catastrophic happened 11 days apart, the odds of that have got to be pretty slim, I would imagine.
Yeah. And I just don't think they were both in California too. Like these people were not even
we're not
like
even talking about
another
separated by
state.
any.
They're literally
And is that why McCasland went missing? Did he go, nope, that was my moment of going, yep, if they're going to be doing stuff like that on his front porch, I'm out.
right?
You know what
No
I
one's
mean?
safe.
Like I'm keeping my wife safe or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, it sounds like they're in the same circles.
Right. So I'm sure he heard of it. Someone probably called him and told him.
It's like,
Did
this
you hear
guy
about
got
what happened to Carl?
Yeah, exactly.
And he
so
was like, better
apparently
figure it out. This makes me almost want to dive into maybe if we could get any clarification around McCasland and what he was doing from February 16th through the 27th. And if there was anything that might be intriguing as to preparation or speaking with anybody individual or any posts anywhere that might be indicative of something showing him, showing that he was aware, even in the slightest, just out of curiosity.
Yeah, that's a good point. And honestly, if you think about it, like even if he got a call from someone that knew Carl, like I'm pretty sure they knew each other. That's why they're on the same thread. But like, what conversation did he have? Right? Like,
well, think about it. When you talk about a corporation that you might work with that has 500 plus employees, even, and you still know people in other departments all the time, even if you didn't work directly with them. It's like, oh, who replaced you, or who, you know what I mean? Like there's always talk, and people stay connected over the years. I'm certain they knew who one another were.
Yeah, and I'm sure they knew that there was going to be UAP disclosures that may have something to do with the technology we're currently seeing that they're talking about. This stuff all connects in that way. And
so
apparently
he was a principal investigator on Hubble Space Telescope, and I was trying to just see what else he worked on.
Yeah, so he was actually characterizing instruments for NEO Surveyor, a JPL program using the exact same infrared spectral bands the Pentagon uses to track adversarial satellites, hypersonic missiles, and UAPs. It's the same physics, same sensors, dual use at the highest level. So once again, another person in the mix related to weapons technology. This is going to be the thing.
And maybe this is going to sound crazy. And I don't know if you got to watch the video I shared with you the other day in regards to the fireballs we're seeing and all of this.
Mm-hmm.
But he has a really great tool. This is Stefan Burns, the guy that I shared the video with, and he is covering all of the ones that it's a marked amount of them. This is not normal. We see them, yes, from time to time, but this is specifically like 6+ times more than we would ever normally see them in this period of time. However, he was stating that if you go back and watch one of his older videos when we were talking a lot more about 3I Atlas, the interstellar object that had passed through our solar system earlier later in the year last year, they had stated that after that passes through, we may see additional activity that is basically triggered because of how close it was to our planet and everything else. So he was stating that could potentially be the cause of these fireballs that we're seeing. But he did actually go in and share a tool that shows our satellites and everyone else's that are surrounding our Earth at all times. And it's astronomical, the amount. Like we've been told there's a lot, but when you see it in a visual sense, it's insane to see how many things are just floating around out there all the time. And I mean, like he zooms in on a smaller scale, but then a bigger and bigger, and there's just so many. And that's obviously not just us, it's everyone. And one of the things he touches on briefly in there is the thought of a space war utilizing these things. So when we're talking about someone like this, who obviously has the, experience he does, that's obviously listed here, and we're talking about the possibility of a space war, it does make you start to question what might be going on
that we're seeing below. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. I had a similar theory. I thought, you know what if it's just these fireballs are pieces of something coming
Right.
down, and
Yeah.
it has something to do with this tech we're talking about, like space
And we're
tech where
talking
they're
about these people where lines are crossing when we're talking about people who worked with weapons, but also UAP. So those two lines crossing makes you really question a bit about whether or not there could be some sort of war, if you will, going on just outside of what we're able to visually see and know about. And if it's kept quiet in the right channels, we wouldn't know. And then when something like this happens, we would be confused as to why
what
they're
we're
being
seeing.
hush hush or what was going on or what did he have for information. And this really makes you question a lot more that potential theory for
And
sure.
also Trump did want that Space Force. Why would he want
Yes,
that? They're not
I
telling you
know.
why, but
I
it's like
know.
there's something going on up there, y'all.
And is that why they are so tight-lipped about what they're gonna release? Like, we knew that they created these, websites. We knew that they had files they were gonna release, but then, like, pulled back and, like, supposedly all the same ones came back. Like, if we're talking about things I've always thought about the UAP stuff. If we're talking about something that supposedly, we don't have all the information for, and it's always been treated like a very surface level kind of woo-woo funny thing. If
Mhm.
that's what we're talking about, then why do you have to adjust anything? Why wouldn't you just give us the information? Because if that's how it's being presented, as if it's nothing super serious, it's just kind of fun. If you want to see it, we'll give you the information type crap, then why is it so, why haven't you done it
Secret.
yet? Why have, you know what I mean? Like, if it's nothing, if it's just like whatever,
Right. And
then why would we be, so concerned about that? They always make it about religion, that people are going to have like a loss of identity and not know what to do. And I just think that's crap. I don't think that's true at all.
I do too. I think they would think that, first of all, it would be a loss of trust, which most people already have by this point. But if they are boomers and not thinking like, well, we still have all this population that believes us, it's like, well, now we don't, because we know there's way more going on that you're not telling us. So if they disclose that, I think people would have a hard time maybe following the government's initiatives. It may be more of a control issue in terms of like, do you trust your government? Like, how much do you trust your government? And if this comes out, well, now you're talking about like people could be revolutionary. You never know what would really send people over the edge. And if it's really bad, like we know we've heard of things where it's like, okay, there's a secret alien race of people who live under the earth and they eat people. It's like, well, what if that actually came out? Well, now we have a freaking problem. Like, if that actually came out, like, sure, there's different levels to this, right? So it's like, okay, we have space weapons that we got because we got the technology from an alien craft that crashed at Roswell at Wright-Patterson, like, whatever. Okay, you've got that level. But then it's like, but what do these beings actually do? And that may be where the dirt comes in, where you're like,
well, and that's why I'm saying, like, I feel like they always have treated it as this funny, haha, silly, like people are silly for believing in it sort of a thing, to now it seems as though people are asking for the information. You're still treating it lightheartedly, but you're also being a little bit weird and stingy about giving the information. So I think it's safe to say that it's not what you have been presenting it as forever, which most of us probably knew, but you know, this stuff definitely makes you question even further about what we're doing outside of our solar system. Not just, alien stuff, alien technology, UFO stuff, not just that, but the idea of, okay, well, great, there's other, but there's other species and other things floating around out there. Okay, cool. But then we find out that they're actively trying to fight them or fight whomever, you know what I mean? Then it's like, whoa, 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 hold on. You know what I mean? It's not bad enough you got to fight everyone on our own freaking planet.
right. Well, the thing is, too, you and I have talked about this, going back to your religion point, like, I think people don't realize that, when you talk about, I'll just talk about this from a Christian standpoint. People don't think that that's the only thing in the world, right? It's just their moral compass and maybe like where they find meaning and things like that. I don't think it's earth shattering to be like, but there's also other things out there. It's like, yeah, we didn't say there wasn't. Like, I don't
like
think
if anyone genuinely thought about, space as a whole,
right.
To imagine anyone being like, we're the only anomaly feels like just silly. I imagine anybody who's taken time, I think some people maybe have just never taken time to think about it.
Right.
They might be doing that more now than they have before. But, I think that would be the biggest impact would be that the people who've never really even entertained it because they live their life, they don't look at that, you know what I mean?
And so would they care now?
There's certainly people who think it defies certain bits of their, religion, but I think it's simply because they just never decided to think about it.
Yeah, and the other thing is people overestimate how much people give a shit about things. There's been crazy things that come out about Epstein and about how the power networks work and about how we're all slaves to a debt system. Not that many people care. I hate to say it. Like, not that many people are like, oh my gosh.
They don't have the time to care. Usually
they don't.
That's the whole thing.
And that's the point. It's like they don't have the time to care. So
or
for the government,
just feel like, what am I going to do about it?
Yeah.
I think that's a very large portion of people feeling like, it doesn't matter if I say something or I don't,
Right. So I don't think, quite frankly, I don't think that this release is that earth shattering. Given that we know everything about other people and what they were testing and that island, and that's pretty bad because those are humans. Like, we're talking about actual people that do really sick and messed up things. And so if you're going to tell me that some, other worldly thing from another planet is coming here and trying to pew us or something, like, okay, but what about the sickos that like live here right now on Earth? Like, okay, like, so, like, great. Yes, there's another thing out there, or it's here, or wherever. It's like, we know so much about things that are going on here and no one's doing it. So bring on the next thing, because it's just getting crazier and crazier. All right. Let's talk about, guys, I'm so sorry.
Just call him Nuno.
Nuno.
I remember this one, but you can go ahead. I do remember this MIT guy. I didn't at all make the connection to the same group of people. I wouldn't.
Well, feel free.
I remember hearing about this before. I don't know a whole lot about it. So,
okay. Well, we'll do a quick thing and then let me know what you think.
Yeah.
So he's the director of MIT Plasma Science and Fusion Center. He's a Hermann Feshbach Professor of Physics, Presidential Early Career Award recipient. So he's got the highest U.S. honor for a working scientist. So he's a big dog. He was shot at his front door while making dinner with his family by a masked gunman.
Sounds a lot like the previous one, doesn't it?
It does. It sounds like a pattern.
It also makes me feel like that could also explain why he went on a walk, McCasland, and it hasn't been found. The same thing. We're talking about 2 in a row, basically, people that he probably knew in their home. And this one in particular with your kids and your wife and all these people right there. You think you want to bring that on your family if something's going to happen?
No. And this was only in December of 2025. So there's only 2 months apart.
That's why I was like, it was probably like red flag here. And then that one, it was like, nope. I'm out.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I feel like at this point.
And maybe his wife played into, if we're talking about McCasland, his wife may have played into the story and is like, yep, he went missing.
Or maybe she knew he went missing, but they know where he is. Maybe
that's what I'm saying.
Hiding.
Like, played into, like, maybe he's somewhere off grid.
That's why she made a weird off color comment.
Yes.
Not thinking about it. Yeah.
100%.
Potentially.
So apparently he was approaching a breakthrough on commercially viable fusion energy. So another fusion thing. Mm-hmm. Fusion doesn't just change electricity. It ends the petrodollar, collapses every oil-producing nation's leverage, and eliminates the financial foundation of the military-industrial complex. So this, to me, is actually completely underrated as this person, because he was about to literally change the world.
And I remember feeling that way about this case when I heard about it, but at the time I didn't have a whole lot of time to like dedicate to looking at it. But I remember being like, why are we talking about this? This guy was doing this major stuff, and then this happens? You're kidding me?
Yeah. So what it basically means is it would be unlimited clean energy, which we all know all of societies run on the energy.
It's the same thing that happened to Tesla.
Exactly. And so every time these people are at a breakthrough moment, they get offed, right? But they're all working within the same sphere. So what I think is crazy about this stuff is you obviously have to go through quite a few initiations with people of power who know what you're doing. And so you get up to a point, right? And then they whack you. Isn't that suspicious? It's like you're getting here, they want to know how to do it, and then they whack you so then no one can replicate it. They steal the patent and no one can have it. We're just on.
Well, did you hear about that kid who was powering his vehicle with water? This is very recent, within the last like 6 months or something. There was this young black guy who had been making videos about how he had created energy and was using water or whatever to literally run his vehicle. He figured it out. And then he went silent for like weeks, and everybody was freaking out that he was taken out because he figured out how to make unlimited energy, whatever, like using water instead of everything else that we need all the time that we pay for. And so he did end up coming back and saying he was still there. He was good. But like, I don't know, I'm sure he would be considered someone at risk, though. Like he certainly should be considering himself at risk if he's not.
Yeah, I agree. And he's not even the first person who's done that. We know there was
another dude who ran his car on water or something.
I think in like the 80s or the 90s.
Yes, it was a long time ago. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
And it's like they just whack you. It's
and he
so
was
crazy.
taken out. Yeah, he was taken out.
He was taken out. So this guy, I actually think he probably deserves his own episode when I think about it, because the implications financially. So how we're part of this like debt issue and this society is that we're always constantly needing the big guys to supply us with our energy needs, our basic human survival needs. We didn't always need that, right? We didn't always have to drive in cars with oil, have our houses ran by the electricity they supply us, all of those things. So if this guy would have removed this stuff, well, then now you have a free society. Now you have a problem on your hands. Now you don't have any control. And now, like, who would really care if they needed to work a job, and if they had free energy, I mean, they could just kind of live on their own. Like maybe the only thing you'd have to pay for is your mortgage and, car repairs. And I don't know, it just takes your society into a whole different place they don't want you to be.
Yeah. And it's easy to think like, oh, well, that would just be like my lights and maybe my heat or something, though. But then the trickle down effect is like, yeah, but what does it mean for huge grocery stores or, other large chains of, companies and whatever that utilize a lot of energy, and like their costs are what they are for the fact that they have to pay for these things. If they didn't have to pay for them, what does that mean for the cost of goods for all of us or anything? Exactly. I mean, the impact it would have would be astronomical. I don't even think we could fathom what if there was an honest presentation of what the savings would be. Yes. Mind you, I doubt that would be the case. They would find ways to, fudge all that up so that they thought it wasn't. Well, it's not really saving that much. It's still going to cost you the same amount, but it would be huge.
It would be huge, and they don't want that, obviously. No. So yeah, I think it also would impact the defense industry. So like every contractor who profits from those tensions created by energy scarcity loses its justification. So that's also kind of an end to wars. If you're undermining what people go to war for, which we know is central banking and oil, I mean, you're kind of ending a reason. So I don't know. I think that one's pretty crazy. Apparently it's the entities most threatened by fusion have combined wealth in the tens of trillions of dollars. How's that? That's a great way to end that one. Tens of trillions. So we know those are the big dogs. Okay, let's look at Melissa. So this is an interesting one to me. She was an administrative assistant to unknown senior LANL official. So basically she had extremely high clearance to someone who was at the Los Alamos National Laboratory. So that's what that stands for. Okay. And then her husband, Mark, is also the superintendent at this place. So what happened? So she vanished after exhibiting unusual behavior. Her phones were factory reset, car, purse, wallet, ID left behind. Her clothing was found roadside, and a blue truck was seen speeding away. This happened in New Mexico, and it was on June 26th of 2025. So how did this happen? She drove her husband to the lab at 6:15 a.m. She passed the security checkpoint requiring a badge. She returned home. She told her daughter she forgot her badge, which was a lie. Because she couldn't have passed the checkpoint without it. And she was last seen walking the highway at Highway 518. Her family friend spotted her, turned around, and she was gone. And the blue pickup started speeding away. So why does this matter? Los Alamos built the atomic bomb. Today it runs on multi-billion-dollar annual budget for advanced weapons and aircraft. So back to the weapons theme. Admin assistants to senior officials have proximity to classified information at the highest levels. Both she and her husband held access. So what happened? So her daughter came home to a locked house, but the keys were on the kitchen table inside. The phones were wiped. Both personal and work phones were completely factory reset. Yes, her clothes were on the side of the road. We talked about that. And her niece told the Albuquerque Journal she feared the case was going cold, like about her missing. And then apparently 125 volunteers, state police, came out to help her search. And then the state police confirmed foul play was not ruled out, but there's been no arrests, no suspects, and no answers. What's the vibe here? What do you feel like?
Well, and I see here that it says police refused to send her clothes for lab testing. Why would you ever refuse to do that?
It doesn't make any sense.
This could be a whole nother episode too.
Yes.
Honestly, this is crazy.
This is definitely giving another one of those missing persons ones. Like, and this one's strange.
This is first. I mean, how there can't rule out foul play. Obviously, there was foul play.
Right.
Who's clearing their phone and who's blocking the door from the outside with the keys inside?
And what did this lady know? Like, what did she know?
And I mean, that's the thing, I guess, administrative assistants. Think about that lady who was Poopstein's administrative assistant. She'd with him for decades. She knows probably everything. They may not be in there knowing the formulas to stuff, but they certainly know who you're talking to and who you're meeting regularly and who are the important people and what kind of information is probably being exchanged. They have administrative assistants have so much information. And
they have to have their
fact that her husband was there too.
Yeah, it's kind of strange too. I mean, this one's worth more of a dig. This is high level, so I'm kind of wondering what her husband has said.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too.
Yeah, has anyone else came forward?
Was he looked into? I assume, we do this with Erica Kirk and we get crap about it all the time about looking into her because she blah, 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 blah. Well, he should be looked into as well, obviously.
Right. What did he know versus her? It's like,
who could have locked their door if the keys were inside? Or, did someone make a spare key? Or like, what's going on? Obviously, something happened. Who'd she get in the pickup
with? Like, who's pickup guy? I don't know. And you can't tell me. I've started to decide too, like when people go missing in cars, like we have traffic cameras everywhere now. You cannot tell me you don't have an at least approximation. That's bull.
And again, let's go back to how many freaking satellites are orbiting our Earth constantly. It's way more than you realize, I can assure you, for anybody watching this. If you haven't seen, it's way more than you realize. It looks like stars look on a clear night. Like that, that's how it looks. Like that's how many I'm talking, like endless amounts of them. And they can see plenty from satellite photos. They can see all kinds of stuff. So yes, they can see plenty of everything.
The surveillance state is here.
And this is also just, again, like we're talking about only individuals who have this higher level access to information that most of us civilians will never, ever have any information on or any idea of. So all of these being as weird as they are, in addition to that, come on, if they do not scream,
it's too much
hit situations. I don't know what does. I really don't know what does.
And if you think about the combined knowledge they all have to have, like if you're thinking about this combined knowledge, it probably would paint a story even, which I know it's kind of space weapony, type, but like if they were in any cahoots with each other, if any of that stuff, I mean, that would give us even more of a motive.
And I think that they're probably like going off the fact that a lot of people just don't pay attention to a lot of specifics around I don't know how to explain this. Like, we know of certain individuals that have higher up positions in like the CIA or whatever, but I feel like a lot of times we don't pay a whole lot of attention to the scientists. They're kind of like forgotten about in the background. We talk about the people who manage what they do, but like the people who are above them that manage like the decisions on what they do with the information. We talk about those people a lot. We don't talk a lot about the people at that mid-level who have found the information, or we don't talk a lot about that. And I think that maybe what we're looking at here is confirmation that they realized we don't talk about these people, and a lot of us don't know who they are, and so they might not need to be as careful about their approach to handling situations with these people, because we don't really know who they are. They're not names we would just know.
Which is probably why these kind of flew off, besides McCasland, like off the radar, even though like Nuno, he was actually pretty high level, but he's not necessarily public facing.
Right,
It's a totally different
about these people. Yes.
Yeah,
And
it's a
they
totally
as
different
as
relationship.
important as they are, any Joe Schmo, you use these names, they're not going to know who you're talking about.
Right.
And I think that is important because I think the people who maybe are cleaning up the situation recognize that. They recognize that these are kind of no-name people who are super important, but like for the most part, unless you're in that field, we don't know who they are.
No. And think about this. I was talking to somebody about this, and whenever you think about the media space, they will only run what they want to know, or they want everyone to know. And it's very hard for even independent media to come out and with a big banger story like this. Like, let's say you were somebody and you heard from any one of these people's family. Well, if your YouTube is smaller than a certain amount, it's never going to clear. Not enough people are going to find out about it. And so it would be hard even if you knew someone who knew someone in these cases to come out and talk about it, because the mainstream media is not going to platform it. And then YouTube is ran by the same people who own the mainstream media. So unless you are really, really big and got this tip and noticed it.
Well,
and
even still, those big people, if we're talking about big independent journalists, they're still talking about the main things.
Right.
They're still talking about, to some extent, the popular topics, because that's why they are popular anyway.
Yes. So I think there's a lot of suppression here. So like, I wonder if we could even find something even deeper on these people from smaller channels. It's just when you think about your search history, that stuff is also SEO, and it feeds into the Google algorithm, and it might not pull it up. So there could be stuff out here, guys, just a heads up, that's floating around. It's
literally the kind of stuff that requires people to give tips to like your email inbox. You know what I mean?
And then for people to find it.
Yep. Yeah.
So
like boots on the ground type stuff, because if it's not, it's just, and it's insane to imagine that it's this easy for this stuff to be lost, but it really is. And
it is.
And looking at all of it together is kind of mind boggling, because to me, it screams, this needs to be looked at like heavily.
Yes, it's a big concern. So this last one I think is one of the craziest ones. This is one of the craziest things I've ever heard. 3 people in one night, all part of the AFRL, were all killed by, they're stating Jacob Pritchard, which he was a censor's directorate, and then he killed his wife, Jamie Pritchard, who worked at Wright-Patterson, which we know that's the theme of the story already. And then Jamie Gustafus, she also worked at AFRL. And she was in the human performance wing, which also just sounds a little sketchy. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
They were found dead on the same night at Wright-Patterson AFB area in Ohio on October 25th, 2025. Apparently, the official narrative is Jacob was responsible for the deaths of his wife, his coworker, before driving his wife's body to a municipal building, opening the trunk on camera, taking his own life. But no evidence has been publicly presented, and there's been no independent verification. So 3 people all in one night. Yes. And apparently the coworker Jacob allegedly killed was someone he barely knew. And they were 3 different directorates. So they were all throughout the system. So it was a censor's lifestyle management person, a human performance person, and they were all together forming a if you think about the picture, it's like of classified program knowledge. So these are people that just got all taken out, that all had different areas of this system classified knowledge. So now you just took out 3 different types of people. It's not just like one guy who was working on one thing. It's like they all 3 were spread out throughout the system and taken out. So maybe they were all working on something independently that formed a bigger story.
It really makes me want to like dig into whether or not there was any information out there that if there was any way to find out that all these people happen to like be in contact with one another at any given time over the last year and a half, I would be so curious to know. But I imagine that would be pretty hard to figure out.
Yeah, I agree.
It would take a lot of time anyway.
There's a lot of crazy things, but I'm going to just sum up like what we've kind of found, and we can break into it. But what I wanted to get at was kind of like how we can connect the dots on how all of these people were. We all know independent things, but similar things keep coming up. So one of them is the Air Force Research Laboratory sits at the center of every single one of these cases. McCasland commanded it. Reza was funded by it. Grillmair's work fed data into the JPL, which the AFRL contracts. So we've heard JPL several times too. The three Wright-Patterson personnel worked inside of the Air Force Research Laboratory, and Casias worked at Los Alamos, which is a sister institution in the same New Mexico classified quarter. So they all are under the Air Force Research Laboratory. In some way or another, they're connected. And then another connection is Reza invented the Mandaloy chain. So apparently Dallas Hardwick developed alloy under McCasland and died in 2014. So another death we didn't even really talk about. And that was before all this stuff happened. And the AR-1 engine has 12 Mandaloy components in every part that touches fire. Every person who understood the full composition is either dead or missing. So all of these people who fell under the Mondaloy chain, we've got Dallas Hardwick, who's died in 2014, Monica, who co-invented this patent, and then General McCasland, he funded the program under this Air Force Research Laboratory. So this is basically telling you how they all worked together in like a funded system. So I just wanted to say that's what they did. And then another thing, what was kind of impacted with the military? What were they threatened, basically? And I thought this was really interesting. So Mandaloy, this tech I just talked about, is inside every spy satellite, GPS satellite, military comm satellite that America launches. If the people who understand it are gone, institutional knowledge cannot be replaced quickly. America's satellite constellation, which underpins every weapon system, financial network, and military communication, becomes vulnerable. So someone took out these people that were associated with Mandaloy, the spy satellite that's used in all of these things we're talking about. And so that knowledge of how these systems work is now eliminated. So you could even argue this could be a foreign hit on
I
these
was just
people.
going to say that. Yeah.
So that kind of raises those questions. So more military impacts. So Coolheart cited McCasland's access to particle beam weapons tech. His anonymous X account was posting the theoretical foundation for directed energy weapons, which is a big deal. It's the same physics as electric propulsion. If that knowledge was being slowly published in coded format and suddenly stops, someone recognized what was happening. So McCasland is like slowly trying to get this tech information out, and someone noticed. McCasland was a really big deal. That's very obvious as we're reading this, right? He funded the spy satellite technology. He also had access to how it actually works, the actual theoretical foundation. So taking him out, I think, was kind of crazy because now it exposed all of these other systems that were taken out. And it is kind of giving foreign influence.
Yeah. Or, foreign manipulation.
Yeah.
Blackmail, whatever. Meaning we end up doing something about it because of someone else's pressure, but
exactly. And it slowly
wouldn't
sounds
be
like
the first time.
No.
In recent history.
And it's slowly weakening. If you think about how these deaths impact things, it's slowly weakening any of our weapon systems.
Right.
Well, that's
what I was initially concerned about, was the weapons aspect and the impact that could have given what we're currently doing. And
well, we're in Iran right now and failing. So is these weapon systems that all of these people had direct knowledge of that may have helped in the war, were they sabotaged, right? We know that they've been trying to get this Iran war. The powers that be.
I was going to say, we know that there has been a solid plan in place for months. This was not a spur of the moment. I mean, years, depending on who you're talking about, years, but you know what I mean? Like in regards to actually taking action and whatever, they may have made it out to be what it was last year with the taking out their nuclear, whatever, weapons manufacturing, whatever you want to call it. I'm sure prior to that, they had already known this was going to end up being the end goal, which would, fall right in line with the gradual missing or murdered individuals on this list, given the timeline.
Given the timeline, it's right before a war.
June 2025, the bombing of Iran.
Yeah, it's that's oddly coincidental. So apparently also that there's a hypersonic threat detection. So Grillmair's infrared work fed into the same bands used to detect hypersonic missiles, which we would want to know. The U.S. has significant gaps versus China and Russia. His data sets survive, but his expertise in interpreting them does not. So that also weakened how we can figure out if hypersonic missiles were coming. So he apparently Grillmair knew how to decode this information, but we still have significant gaps in it and probably needed improvements with his knowledge. And yet China and Russia, they're ahead of us. Does anyone want that to be mainstream media? China and Russia have better hypersonic threat detection than the US.
Yeah, right.
Come on, that's a big deal. Okay.
It's crazy how each of them has such a like important connection to whatever.
To our defense system.
Each of them, each of them has. And it does make you wonder, like, if the situations with Nuno and Grillmair and if those two where they were so like out in the open when it happened, it does make you wonder if like there was like an urgent need for whatever took place. So I would want to know what happened just before, or what was going on with them professionally just before the situation with both of them, because it does seem, borderline reckless the way that it was performed for either of them. And it makes you wonder what was going on right before that may have caused there to be less preparation for,
taking them off,
I guess. Yeah.
Yes, taking them off the stage. Yeah, 100%.
I feel like the moment you have a physical body somewhere where other people can see it, you're kind of being reckless, and I don't think anybody could argue that fact. So if that were the case with those two in particular, what was going on that urgently required? I imagine these people, given what they do and like their jobs, I'm sure they're probably very busy. These are people who are obviously very intelligent. Generally, you can make an assumption about what kind of a person those kinds of people are. I imagine they don't have a lot of enemies. They're probably busy working, being smart people and doing things like that, So to act as though it would just be someone who didn't like them is kind of wild. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So it really makes you question even more so why it was so aggressive with those two in particular.
Yeah, I agree. I like I like that this is painting a picture for everyone, because then you can move into the fusion energy thing, which we were also talking about. So working fusion is the end of an oil economy, which every single economy is based on right now.
And
so
everything we're dealing with right now is
based on that. So it's kind of saying every oil nation, every defense contractor, every geopolitical tension that the people above us profit from, it's gone simultaneously. Trillions are at stake. No more war machine. No more, really, I mean, not such a need for all of this other tech, really. Because it's
just about to say, if these people were still around and this information had gotten out, would we have been able to avoid what we're doing right now?
You would imagine so. Just like,
and if that were the case, why would we not want to avoid that?
It's kind of similar to the Kirk case, too. If you think about the parallels to all this, is like there's certain people in the way of an agenda to be played out.
Yes.
And once these people are eliminated, well, look where we are. We're in a big old war that nobody wants, but somehow we got here.
Yes. They want it.
Exactly.
And if we were to do this, then they wouldn't be able to do it. So,
yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And then finally on this systems impact analysis, the McCasland's wife, the Roswell disclosure, we didn't hit on this as much, but she basically confirmed there was Roswell bodies and debris at Wright-Patterson in one of her statements. And the 80-year denial is finally over. And then we know that Trump's now, stating he's going to release the files, and McCasland was just vanished a few days later. Like, who needed this UAP program?
It really makes me want to like spiderweb the people off too, just to be able to see essentially like a visual, of like who was here and how they knew this person, and how, like, if there's like a progression, like if this person worked on this, that connected to this, and if that connected to that, then this connected to, you know what I mean? Like an actual, almost like a visual, but a timeline connection as well to like what each of them did. And in regards to like the process of everything we're talking about. And this also makes me, when I think about people like anybody really who's covering what's going on right now in Iran, like Valhalla or literally anybody who talks about it, and they talk about the Straits of Hormuz and like the issues we're having with it being closed and what it's doing in regards to oil and all of that, all of them will say the same thing, which is anyone with half a brain and even a monicum of knowledge about how this works would know that that was what was going to happen. So if you know that's what's going to happen and you want to move forward with whatever you're doing, yeah, like maybe these people were getting ready to be like, we don't have to do it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I mean, it really does make you wonder if it's all connected to, because they would have known, like acting as if there's so many people acting as if what's happening right now was like, well, now they've closed this and now we don't have access. And how would they have not known that? They had to have known that. That's crazy. Like, what? How could you make that mistake? Maybe they knew this was that. Yeah, I'm sure they knew that, which then asks the question as to why. Why did they want that to happen?
Yeah, I mean, I have my own theory, which is I think they want to get the U.S. out of the Middle East, make Israel the main power there, move the dollar system and weaken it basically over to whatever digital currency they want. And if fusion energy didn't exist, then their petrodollar didn't exist, and then they can't take over in that way. They'd have to think of a new plan. Like, it all makes sense to me. If this is all, and it's looking actually a little more foreign operated and owned than I think people were realizing, that would just be another play on the playbook of getting the U.S. out of the Middle East, swamping all of our satellites. Our hypersonic missile stuff is not where it needs to be. Like, guess who would know that?
Yeah.
Our greatest ally? They probably would. They would probably know all of this information. And what would they want us to do? Well, they would want us to sink our own ship and
they don't want us to have that. What would that would be terrible. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Because all the people that own these bigger companies, they don't want us off.
This to me explains much more readily why they would not be talking about it. Like I said, like they're not making announcements except very few and far between, little 5-minute announcement that they have whatever information, is mental fog or whatever in regards to McCasland. The fact that they're not talking about it, to me, when they're not talking about it, they want to talk about the things they want us to talk about. Mm-hmm. They'll talk about those things all day long because they know if we're talking about them, they can do whatever else they need to do. So if they're not talking about it, that should be a red flag for anybody who realizes.
Yeah, I agree about that. I don't have a slide on this last one, but or on one of these that I want to talk about, but what's being hidden. I'm going to read a couple points about that, just so we can all think about it. I don't have a slide for it though. So what's the true origin of Mondaloy? We've said that a couple times. Congressman Burchett asked directly where the materials came from, and intelligence communities confirmed to him that exotic materials exist, materials the government doesn't fully understand, exotic UAP. If Mandaloy was derived from recovered craft, Reza's patent is a cover story. Her disappearance removes the person most capable of explaining the gap. So if anything was recovered that people don't want to know, well, they've taken her off the map. So now they can make up their own story. Also, what is stored at Wright-Patterson? McCasland's wife confirmed it in her own roundabout way. Bodies and debris stored at the Wright-Patterson. 80 years of denial, functionality over. The question is what happens when it becomes impossible to ignore. So now we've got 2 UAP confirmed, most likely hidden stories, right?
Yeah.
And then the Podesta emails confirm McCasland was not publicly who he was privately. Skeptic in public, but he was secretly advising disclosure movement. So talking about wanting to get this information out to the public. And he was running the lab housing the most sensitive classified material. And then his X account was a graduate level classroom in electric propulsion, the theoretical basis of craft UAP witnesses described. So he's basically telling everybody online what kind of technology on his own X account, which is wild work. And if you weren't able to decipher that as like a regular plebe, you wouldn't know this and you'd be like, well, this is interesting. But like, if you're in the government and you're smart, you're going to figure out what he's doing, which is slow rolling.
And I also do feel like these still, again, I feel like these are still individuals who are in a position that a lot of people don't pay attention to. And I think that the people who would have potentially been involved in whatever happened here know that. And so it does make me wonder if he was able to get away with putting that information on there, because there's really no one paying a whole lot of attention to him in that same capacity. You know what I mean? Thinking probably along the same lines. Who's going to even know who this guy is? We do,
Right.
but they don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
Because I would think, like, look at we freaking say our greatest allies name one time in a video, and they're gonna be like, we're not going to show that shit to anybody.
Right.
But this guy can post multiple times about, all of this stuff on a social media platform, and he gets away with it for a period of time. Yeah, because they're not watching him. Because they probably just think of them as like, yeah, they're not, because they know other people aren't. They know what we are paying attention to and what we're not. And if we're not, they don't care so much until they do care,
Right. And now that the UFO, UAP, all that kind of tech is coming out, and here's the funny thing is, if these people weren't taken off the map, I don't think anyone would think about this type of tech that's coming.
No.
They're going to disclose. They would care more about where are the people or alien, whatever you want to call them. How many times have they landed here? What do we do about it? It would be very basic discussions. It would not be about what is their tech, unless this was in a higher IQ discussion, right? But now we're like, these people are getting taken out because of defense related tech that the government doesn't want us to know. And now they've actually spun like a spotlight on it. I do think this will pick up, and I think people are going to catch on. Yeah. So unfortunately for them, I don't know this worked. So I kind of wanted to know like a hypothesis of what theory may be true on why these people may be missing. So I put a couple on here. Foreign intelligence extraction. So both China and Russia run long-term ops targeting American defense scientists. Now, you can sub any other country into there, but for the sake of this video, China and Russia maybe. So they may be running these ops and wanting to take us out. I actually believe it probably is a foreign intelligence extraction. It's just by who would be the question. So the Mondaloy specs is the most valuable aerospace IP on Earth. So they took out the founder and the funder of the most valuable aerospace IP on Earth. That's wild work. So don't steal. So their classic doctrine is they don't steal files. They remove people who know things never written down. Well, I know other countries that do the same thing. So it's not like they're just holding these people for ransom. They just silence them. And then what kind of supports this claim? McCasland and Reza both vanished with zero forensic trace. So we know that. And then Russia lost leverage when RD-180 was phased out. Motive is clear. So they're saying when Russia lost one of their programs, they basically wanted us to go down with them. I don't know if I 100% think this is the right country, but I think it is a country. It's a country. We can all fill in the blank on what country, but I do think there's evidence for some type of like foreign involvement. Whether I think we laid that out.
I mean, I agree. Yeah. And that was exactly kind of initially what I was thinking initially when I heard about him, because I was like, everybody was talking about it from a UFO, UAP standpoint. And in my first video, when I covered it, I had said, to me, this weapons stuff is way more sticking out to me than the UAP stuff, which now we're seeing could be connected in a way, but essentially with the same idea behind it. The impact we would have over, what we could do with that information. Right.
Yeah. And if McCasland's basically giving a slow intro on what this information is and just like dropping hints and giving out all this information, like obviously he's going to be, there could even have been a joint effort on him. Let's be honest. Like this man's like trying to get disclosure. Nobody wants him to disclose anything. Like he could have been similar to some other theories about Charlie Kirk where it's like maybe internal and external. I was just
literally thinking the same thing. Like someone else is going to come out and say he went in witness protection, which I guess maybe he could have, like we said, but I don't think it would be witness protection. That's government run. And I don't think that's going to be the case. But you know what I mean? Like going, missing, I don't know, but to go missing from the government is going to take a certain type of skill that I don't think a lot of people have. So
yeah, I agree. So another theory is a domestic program protection. So the UAP reverse engineering programs operated in like deep just deep
compartmentalization.
I don't want to say that word. It hurts. Deep section.
There's a lot of letters there.
There's many letters. So apparently it was structured to prevent congressional and presidential oversight, which we know a lot of these projects operate in that space.
I was going to say, this is exactly the compartmentalization is exactly what we actually have been saying a lot as well in regards to the Charlie Kirk thing, and how people are like, oh, how would all these people be involved? They're not all involved. They're in little compartments of information, but each compartment of information has information that can be held over their heads and keep them quiet. That's it. So if they 100%. Have questions or doubts and they want to speak up, they're not going to, because they've got this that they can hold over your head. They don't all have to be involved in the ultimate end game. They just have information that they'll be able to keep over their heads to keep them quiet, and they will, because they love their life and their family. Right. That's it. Everything is set up that way, obviously, for purpose. Because if everyone had all the information, then what, they can't keep anything to themselves or make decisions executively.
Yeah. And honestly, with Trump's disclosure, it's basically existential threat to these black budgets. These people have to testify in Congress when this stuff comes out. And let's be honest, dead witnesses cannot clarify what classified documents mean. Dead people, missing people, they're off the board. So you're not getting called up there.
We're talking about the people who understand how to, how to break down and clarify how these types of things work. They're the person to do it. So otherwise you're going to have everyone else going, yeah, but I didn't write that, and I don't really know how they got there.
Right.
You know what I mean?
There's only so many experts in things like this. Right.
Because exactly.
If everyone was an expert at this, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
So we might still have the information, but we don't have the mind behind it, which, we're only, you can document as much as you want, but you can't document everything, and you can't make, there's always something that is missing or whatever.
Yeah, if you've ever worked at any company ever, it's like if you miss a critical person and they got fired for no reason, or they left, and you're like,
it down even here's the document that tells you how to use this program that we all use every day, and then you're using it, you're like, well, this isn't working. This says to do this, but it's not working. Oh yeah, sorry. This whole thing has been going on. We all need to do this instead. We all that's a verbal thing that they've all interacted and communicated with each other, but it's not in the formal document because it's not a regular thing. It's just this is an issue with the program. They're working on fixing it.
Yeah.
That's not documented because it's just, Well,
and also when you're the person making these things, you are the knowledge expert, and you're not always going to think to put it down. And
you're not going to know what questions someone's going to have or not understand about what you wrote.
Yeah, it's open for interpretation. You don't have the same, if I was to speak about something that I was, an expert on,
efficient in,
yeah, it would come across differently than if someone else did it. It's a means of communication. It's just totally different.
All the time. Like someone who tries to word vomit something that they think, to clarify for you, this is blah, blah, blah. And everyone's like, I don't have any idea what you're talking about, dude.
Yes.
Yes.
bro, it's not
can
computing.
You speak on dumb terms? Cause I don't know what you're talking
Layman's
about.
terms, my dude. I am out.
Yeah. So just because you have their paperwork means nothing in the way of making sure people can understand what you were doing. That doesn't,
Once again, if other people could do it, they already would have. So we're talking about big brain energy. And they had special clearance to stuff that other people who were interpreting the files will not have. And they were in on the ground level. That stuff matters. All of it comes together. Okay. Last theory, extraction, not elimination. So both Reza and McCasland have zero forensic trace, no blood, no body, no violent evidence, no evidence of violence. So it could be a classified protection, foreign power program that doesn't officially exist, because they vanished without zero forensic trace, people could say that could be the case. So the only reason that this may be a thing is because of that green burial memorial appearing while helicopters were still searching. So basically that site we were talking about.
Weird,
and then
go to that later.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. And then the X account going silent at that exact minute, all right, come on. And it's not necessarily signatures of people being killed, but people being moved around, witness protection-y, what you guys make up your own decisions. But I think the counter is they can still talk if they were ever it's my same counter to the Kirk theory.
If they're being taken away for the purpose of because they have this knowledge and they don't want people to have it, why are they going to risk that? They don't care. They don't care that much.
I agree.
They might care if they think there's not a soul out there who could figure it out, but they may be like, well, that's fine. But this dude who's on the same page as us understands it enough. We don't need them anymore.
Right. Well, and here's our final timeline. It's very short, sweet, pretty, but I think it's important to kind of start ending on this quote. Something dark is going on. I know these scientists and researchers, they have testified and we've got to get to the bottom of it. It's just too much. And by the way, I'm not suicidal. So Tim Burchett said that at US Congress. So we know there's something up here. And so our first confirmed hit was actually, I think we're missing the earlier ones, but anyway, we'll start with this on the disclosure timeline.
I think it's not.
Yep. So Nuno assassinated December 15th, 2025 at home. He was the MIT fusion director, DOE contact. So we know he was a big deal, proposed all that technology, the fusion technology, all that. And then shortly after, Carl, February 16th, shot dead on his porch. So these aren't that far apart. And then February 21st, Trump announces release of all government UFO and alien files. And then shortly after that, McCasland disappears only 6 days later. And his X account goes silent the same minute. And then in March, his wife confirms Roswell bodies and debris stored at Wright-Patterson. And then March 2026, our Rep Burchett goes on record, says scientists testified to Congress, says he is not suicidal. So this just kind of paints like a very small picture of everything we just talked about, which how quickly and tightly these timelines came together when it was starting to become obvious there was going to be some sort of disclosure. And that's not even covering some of those people earlier in the that were killed.
Like if we wanted to go the route of like the oil situation in Iran and all of that, we did that in June, and June is when that lady was gone. She might have been the first on the list, I guess, but I don't know, dude. Yeah, this is crazy. And I hope for the sake of people having knowledge that this is watched. I hope that people will watch this,
Me too.
For its entirety, of course, but if not, at least a good chunk to get an idea of what we're talking about. And then in addition, sharing it. And I say this not for the purpose of being, selfish. I mean, sure. Yeah. I want more subscribers. Subscribe. Okay. But that's not what I mean. I think that this is very important. And I thought that from the beginning when I started reading about actually the Nuno guy about luck, particularly McCasland, which is what really spawned this for me. And I just wasn't hearing people talk about it, which screamed even louder in my face that it's important. And I think given everything that we just covered, it clearly is. And I do hope that people will share the information and get it out there, because I think that at this point for us, the more people who understand the structures of how the control is handled and managed and, all of that, I think that we absolutely need more people to be aware of all of that, because it's how they keep us suppressed and it's how they keep us manageable. And, they want us to be stupid, and you don't have to know all the information about all the things, but you have to be aware of the possibility of just the way that they approach their handling of this stuff, because it's real. And I don't think that anything we said in this is highly crazy. I don't think anything that we've talked about is wild in any capacity. If you want to make it wild based on the thought of it being related to UFOs, fine. But the reality is that any of the information that probably has UFO, UAP, extraterrestrial type stuff, there's an overlap. Those files have access to the same group of people who are doing this other stuff that we've already covered as well. And the overlap of that information is obvious. And, I think that they maybe feel a little less threatened about it because people will take it less seriously with the UFO label slapped on there. But I really hope that people don't, because I think that we need to be paying very close attention to what is happening after this and, moving forward in this group of people.
Yeah, I think the overarching story here, after we went through all of the evidence of what we know, right? Because some of it was even like, hey, this isn't confirmed. But from what we know, we just looked at a timeline of when they're trying to slowly take scientists out and people associated with these scientists who are working on high level weaponry and classified information that Trump was trying to push to get out. And yet we get pushed into a war extremely close after this information, after missile technology issues, after this, fusion technology, where we could essentially just eliminate the petrodollar entirely. So we're talking about weapons infrastructure being put on red alert. I would just say a red alert. This is a problem. Our missile systems there's a gap there. And then talking about technology that could eliminate major economies. And then we're also talking about, and that eliminates the need for oil, which is a huge reason we're in this war right now. We all know it. And shifts, economies entirely. And then you're just talking about getting spacecraft that was hidden. It's basically confirmed by McCasland's wife, but then the use of that spacecraft is for plasma technology, which impacts all of our weapon systems. Well, now you're painting a picture of the American war machine being at risk, and all war machines being at risk. If all of this stuff isn't eliminated and all these people aren't eliminated, well, it paints a different picture. It's not like, woo woo, these people came down from the sky and gave us some guns. It's like, woo woo, we could totally undo the whole entire structure of how it actually is being.
And also just like keeping in mind the fact that we have the possibility of having, I mean, we've known for basically forever that we could probably have free energy if they decided to allow us to. But it just goes to show that they're not doing anything for us. Like, people want to continuously make the claim that the choices they're making above our heads are for us. They're not for us. If they were for us, then we wouldn't be anywhere near where we are right now, especially knowing we have the knowledge we have and watching what's happening. You know what I mean? Like, they're not doing it for us. They're not doing any of it for us. If they were, why are we paying for energy? Well, because they want the money from everyone else. It has nothing to do with anything that would be better for us as people. They don't care.
Yeah, I agree. And we wouldn't have black budget operations. We wouldn't have assassinations. We wouldn't be having, wars, endless, needless wars for no reason, when we just saw they probably are not necessary. You could probably change the whole entire global economy.
We wouldn't be working our lives away over 40 hours a week to support our families. We wouldn't be doing that stuff.
Yeah, it's all under the control system that they want to keep implementing. And this just is another layer of that.
Their funds, and they can stay rich.
Money is the highest ethos for these people. And it's honestly, time and time again, when we're researching these stories, it's like, this is obviously because money would be impacted. We wouldn't be on the petrodollar. We wouldn't be doing these things. It's like, it's the same story.
And it is money, but it's power. And you have the power because you have the money. They go hand in hand. People want to feel powerful. They want to feel like no one can do anything above them. And they can do that by having all of the money. If they have the money, then they can do everything over you. That's it. Yeah, and it's our current money system even. It's like, money doesn't even need to be that big of a deal, but they've made it a big deal. That's what they've implemented, is something that is a big deal. It's not that serious. Money never was in ancient times. It was a means of trade. It wasn't means of control. Right. There's a difference. Yeah. So yes, it's control now.
It's control. It's a means of control.
And this is like, if all this was like what we seem to think it could potentially be, it's clearly control, obviously, because otherwise we would be looking at this as like protected at all costs, right? Like, that's what I would look at it like this is our future, potentially protected at all costs. No, that's not what they want. Well, I think this was such a good one. Super interested in the response from everybody. Leave us a like, comment, subscribe. If this was interesting to you, I think we have a couple part 2, 3, 4s that we could take from each and every person. Whole series. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll do more on our weekly show, which is Saturdays at night, typically around 8:00. We call it Rogue Discourse because American Discourse News mixed with Rogue Dissident. Please go follow us on both of our separate channels. You should be able to find that below. Please like, subscribe. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. We know it's a long one, but it's a fun one.
Yeah.